Hello, Earth children. It is I, Miss Molly, here with another very special story time. Today, we will be learning and going on an astral journey with Sun Ra, reading the Cosmo Biography of Sun Ra by Raschlea. Now, before we get started, I think it's important to talk a little bit about who Sun Ra was. Sun Ra was first and foremost a jazz musician, but was also from the planet Saturn. And he and his Arkestra played music to communicate to the stars and to communicate to alien life. They played whatever they wanted, however they wanted. And each of them were instruments of the universe, exploring jazz in every way possible. They were one of the foremost free jazz bands, as in they didn't listen to any rules, and they played exactly what they wanted, and it didn't always sound great, but it was unique. I personally think Sun Ra and his Arkestra was one of the greatest groups of weirdos the Earth has ever seen, and I am so thrilled to get to share him and his music with you. Please enjoy Sun Ra.
The music is different here. The vibrations are different. Not like Planet Earth. Planet Earth's sound of guns, anger, frustration. There was no one to talk to on Planet Earth to understand.
The Cosmo Biography of Sun Ra. The Sound of Joy is Enlightening by Raschlea. Sun Ra always said that he came from Saturn. Now you know, and I know, that this is silly. No one comes from Saturn. And yet, if he did come from Saturn, it would explain so much. Let's say he did come from Saturn. Well, on May 22nd, 1914, Sun Ra landed on Earth. Looking around, he found himself in Birmingham, Alabama. His parents named him Herman and called him Sunny. Being from another planet, Sun Ra was naturally interested in everything earthy. Trees, clouds, spotted dogs, apples, hot dogs and corn on the cob, hats, socks, and wigs, drawing, dancing, and throwing a ball, and most of all, music. It was the thing about Earth that was most like the stars.
Now, who were some of your early influences?
Well, the planets, the creator, mythical gods, real ones, people, flowers, everything in nature, inspiration. Musicians get their inspiration really from environmental things, and all musicians are inspiration to me, no matter what style they're playing.
It is not so surprising that Sun Ra was a musical genius. He was a fine piano player by the time he was 11. He could note-tape music that he heard on the radio or in the dance halls. Sun Ra noticed the books in the library of the Black Masonic Temple. He spent many hours reading about the great philosophies of the earth, including Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry, which other musical geniuses like Mozart had also been curious about. One thing puzzled Sun Ra. The Earthlings insisted on sorting themselves into two varieties, the white variety and the black variety. Sun Ra was sorted into the black variety. Also, the name his parents had given him, Herman Blount, hardly seemed the name of someone from Saturn. As soon as he could, Sun Ra changed his name to Le Sonier Ra, and then simply to Sun Ra. As a teen Earthling, Sun Ra spent long afternoons at the Forbes Piano Company, where even though the store was owned by Earthlings of the white variety, he was welcome to play, compose, or just practice the piano. Remember, this is like 1930. Before he left high school, Sun Ra was already a professional musician, leading his own ensemble and accompanying singers. Then Sun Ra saw the strangest thing. All over the globe, the Earthlings began fighting and killing each other. It was the Second World War. Sun Ra refused to join in. Questioning him, the Birmingham Draft Board understood that his conscience would not allow him to fight. Little did they know that he was from Saturn. So, they designated him a conscientious objector. Instead of going to war, Sun Ra was sent to work in a forest in Pennsylvania. After the war, wishing to learn more about earthly music, Sun Ra traveled to Chicago to absorb its blues, doo-wop, and jazz. Sun Ra mastered all of these as both a performer and a composer. Sun Ra drew other musicians to him. They played in small groups, medium-sized groups, and big groups, with singers or without singers, all kinds of ways. They were like sailors on a boat, bound for a new world of sound. And like all good sailors, they played and danced and sang while their captain, Sun Ra, steered the ship. They called themselves the Arkestra. Being from outer space, Sun Ra was afraid neither of electrons nor electricity. So he was one of the first musicians on Earth to use an electric keyboard. He played the mini moog, the clavinet, and the roxychord. Between working at night and rehearsals in the morning, Sun Ra browsed in Chicago's bookstores or spent the long afternoons simply walking the city's streets and avenues. He was an intergalactic boulevardier. This left little time for sleeping. In his life on Earth, Sun Ra rarely slept for several hours in a bed. He took short naps throughout the day, sometimes even dozing during his own rehearsals. When he woke again, he immediately continued with what he had just been doing. In the early 1960s, Sun Ra sailed with the Arkestra to New York City. Though some New Yorkers complained that Sun Ra was too far out, what did they expect from a Saturnian? The wise ones, like Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk, said, "Keep it up, Sonny," and "Yeah, it swings."
I think some people on this planet are going to wake up to realize that it's the unknown that they need to know in order to survive.
Would it surprise you that the Arkestra made its own clothes? Robes of purple cotton, silk scarves, bone necklaces, and crowns of shining metal foil. From this time on, joining the Arkestra meant being ready to live with the Arkestra, rehearse with the Arkestra, and perform with the Arkestra, sometimes playing for many, many hours on end.
Of the world, listen, while you have the chance, find your place among the stars, get in tune with outer worlds, rhythm, multiplicity, harmony, equational melody, horizon speed, astro black and cosmo.
The music may be crisp and tight one moment, then wild and free the next, changing with a nod of Sun Ra's head or a wave of his fingers. One disadvantage of coming from Saturn was that Sun Ra could never really understand or care too much about money. The New York landlords, on the other hand, did, and kicked the Arkestra out, so they sailed again, this time to Philadelphia.
Well, Sun Ra is a nice group that I live a few doors away from Sun Ra. Is a nice group. The players who perform in Sun Ra are nice men because I see them every day. And Sun Ra's music is good music.
And one of them own the store, and they be into like the space and things like that.
Philadelphia as their home port, the Arkestra traveled all around the earth, playing, singing, and dancing for people who spoke every language. Of all the places they visited, Sun Ra's favorite was where the Great Pyramids stand, in the sands of Egypt. At last, after 79 years, it was time for Sun Ra to say goodbye to the Earth and all his friends there. On May 30th, 1993, he returned to Saturn. Before he left, Sun Ra said, "You may think that it is gravity that holds us together, but it is not. It is music."
Interested me so that I dared to knock at the door of the Cosmo. Interested me so that I dared to